Hey guys, it's Erica, and last month I filmed a video where I potted up some of my water propagations, so I'm here with a 1 month update on them. I feel like sometimes it's kind of difficult to transition your plants from soil to water, and that's usually the time where the plant is most likely to die. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of tips on how I propagate or how I transfer them successfully, and hopefully you can find this video helpful. I left on all of the dead leaves, and I'm just gonna let you know what's going on with each plant. So yeah, let's get into it. The first plant that I moved over to soil was my Begonia Sinbad, and it was just a measly stump when I first potted up, and it is still a measly stump. The thing about this plant is that this section that I had in water propagating was one that fell off of like the entire begonia was infected with powdery mildew. So I didn't think that the section I propagated had powdery mildew, but once I put it in soil, at first it was fine. There was powder on the stem only, not the leaf, but the leaf soon got powdery as well, so I cut it off. I treated the plant, and there was already a new leaf growing out, so I left that one to grow out, and then that one got infected as well, so I cut it off. The first segment on the plant, I just cut it off entirely because that whole portion had powder on it, and the lower portion that is left here didn't have any, so I was hoping that maybe that would be the end of it. But right now I'm noticing that there is powder all over the second portion, the second segment now, and there is a new leaf growing. So I've cut off 2 new leaves from this plant since I potted it up, so this is the 3rd new leaf, and I might end up cutting it off as well. But that's growing out. There's also a second one about to come out, and on the lower portion there is also a leaf coming out. Usually whenever you cut off the top portion of a plant, it will encourage growth to come from the bottom portion of the plant, so that's what's happening here. You can see there's growth on the bottommost node. So I wouldn't say this plant is doing well by any means. It's sick with powdery mildew, but I'm going to continue treating it because it's a really gorgeous plant, and I just really want it to survive. So, I mean, I feel like it transitioned to soil perfectly fine. It's like, that's not the reason that it's dying. For this plant, I just kept it moist as much as possible. I never let it dry out. I wouldn't recommend for when, like, as soon as you transfer over your plants to soil, I would not recommend you letting them dry out at all because the roots need to kind of adjust to being in soil. And this one had a lot of roots. I'm just hoping to get rid of this powdery mildew. I've been using Betsy Begonia's spray, so I'm gonna keep using that and hopefully it works. If you have any powdery mildew tips, please leave them down below because I really want this plant to live. Even though it's a little nub, smaller than it was before, I still love it. The next plant that I potted up was my Variegated Maranta. This plant has pretty much completely transitioned as well. I have not let the soil dry out for this plant either. You can see there are some yellowing leaves. On a lot of these plants, you're gonna see that the oldest leaves are pretty much yellowed and they're ready to go. So I think that's fine. That's pretty normal to lose the old leaves because there's just new growth coming in. So it's put out new growth, lots of new growth. There's some really nice looking leaves here, so it's doing really well. Oh, I forgot to mention where I'm keeping these plants. So the begonia I'm keeping under my grow lights, and this one I've been keeping in an east facing window. It's been getting pretty low amount of sunlight, so that's how it's doing. I think on this one only, well, it looks like 3 leaves. 3 leaves in total are lost, but there has been a lot of new growth been pushed out. It's really tiny at the top, but it's new growth, so I'm pretty happy with it. And then I had my Hoya bilobata DS70. This one I feel like has transitioned very well. Also, I feel like all of the plants have really transitioned well. I have kept it watered as well. It's been drying out very quickly, but I haven't been watering it as often as, say, my Exotica. I feel like since it's a Hoya, I didn't want to go too crazy on the watering. I never let it completely dry out, but I let it get very close to being completely dried out. I'm gonna be honest, for these plants, I never really used a moisture meter. I kind of just looked at the pot and saw like how the soil looks from the bottom portion, or for like terracotta pots, you can clearly see when the pot is dry and when it's wet, so I use that to my advantage. But it's doing fine. It hasn't really grown much. Hoyas grow pretty slowly, I think, but its leaves are fuzzy and they're very healthy looking. There is some new growth, but it's coming out from the lower portion, so you can see there's some new leaves here, which I'm so excited about. It looks so nice. And I think that because there's only 3 stems in here, that stem is the one showing the most growth, and it overall just looks the healthiest. I think that this stem over here is showing signs of new growth over here. I'm not sure, but it's definitely not showing as much that it has grown in this past month as much as the other plants that I have, but it's still looking good, and I feel like it's good. It's solid in soil now, so I don't need to worry as much. Usually I give my plants about a month, and then I'll feel like they're good. They're solid. They're going to be good in soil. I don't really need to worry as much. The transitioning period is pretty much over in my opinion, so there we go. And then we have my Monstera adansonii narrow form. I think that this leaf was already yellowing before I potted it. I don't really remember, but of course I could look back at the footage. So this is also like an old leaf that's ready to go. So I'm fine with it. It's not something I'm worried about, but it's this one I think is the one that's been growing the fastest. This one lives under the grow lights, so it's been doing very, very well. I haven't let this one dry out either. For the stake, it's already it's already outgrown the stake, which I expected to happen pretty quickly. If I had butterfly clips for that, are used for orchids, I feel like that would have been the perfect thing to kind of clip the stems up the stake, but I didn't. I don't know where I put mine. I maybe threw them away, but I tied at least one. It's way over, like it's so much taller. This plant is so much taller than the stake. It's laughable that I even tried putting this stake here. But I guess I'll switch it out for a taller one, or I'll add some to it. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but I think it looks pretty cute. This plant is growing very well, and I'm really excited about it. I don't think there has been any loss of leaves, only growth, and this one's about to go. So that's the only leaf that's been lost. Okay, now we have my crazy, really ugly Monstera deliciosa, which is not that ugly anymore, so it's still pretty bad, but it's only because of this stake and these 2 leaves. The reason, if you haven't seen the video, the reason that I put this plastic chopstick here was because the plant wouldn't stay up at all. So I wanted the roots to kind of take hold of the soil and be able to hold the plant up itself. That's why I put this ugly stake here, and it's grown out some new leaves and it looks really pretty. This plant I've had outside on my patio, my east-facing patio, and it's growing. I really love these new leaves. They're so beautiful. They're just like beautiful heart shapes. I've been wanting a juvenile Monstera deliciosa without any fenestrations because I think they're so cute. They just have these little heart-shaped leaves, and I'm really happy that I have one now. It's really been growing, as you guys can see from all this new growth. The only thing is one of the old leaves is yellowing. I actually think it's because when I close this, you can kind of see it's like bent. So I think that it would still be green and ugly looking like this one, but I tightened this too much, so that's why it's yellowing. So I'm gonna cut it off, but I wanted you guys to see that. So this was my fault. I'm sorry, little plant. I'm not too mad about it because this is one of the ugly leaves I don't want. This is another ugly leaf that I don't want, but if it's the biggest leaf with the most amount of chlorophyll, then I'm just gonna leave it on. But yeah, I'm so excited about this. I'm so happy it has all this new growth. Again, I haven't let this one dry out. It hasn't been too difficult to keep this one wet. I'll just go outside with my watering can and water it every like 4 days or so. I've definitely cut back on the watering since it's become more established. So yeah, it's doing really well. Really well. I think out of all the plants that I have potted up, I think I'm most proud of that one because it was just so ugly when I potted it up, and it looks so much better. Not like it doesn't look good yet, but it does look a lot better. All right, here we have the string of dolphins, and for this one I combined it with an old plant that I had. So it was some old cuttings that I already potted up, and well, it was an old cutting that I potted up, and I just added the new ones. I don't remember how many strands that I put into this pot. I feel like it was about 4, and of those 4, only 2 of them survived. So I left this here to show you guys. There is a dead string of dolphins. That was a really small one. It just shriveled up and died. And then this one right here, it's not dead, but you can see the base. The base of the plant is shriveled and dried, so it's not getting any water or nutrients from the soil anymore because it's completely cut off from its roots. It's dead right there. So what I'm gonna do is just simply cut it and then put it back in water until it grows roots again, and then I can try again the next time I pot it up. So you can see the other one died quite a while ago. It's already yellow and shriveled, and I could take that out now. But this one just recently died, and I think it's because I missed a watering. It's in a south-facing window. It gets a lot of sun, and when it gets that much sun, it should be watered a lot more often. So I think that missing a watering caused that, but otherwise the plant looks really good. For plants such as this one, like a string succulent, you should always look at the base of the plant to see if they're all still there, because a lot of times they will shrivel at the base, they'll die at the base, and the foliage looks fine until suddenly it doesn't, and by then it's too late to propagate it and try and save it. So just keep an eye on the base of the plant. Other than that, it's doing pretty well. I would say this one has done the least well out of all of the other plants, but it's fine. We can save this part and put it in soil again. Maybe I'll put it in this pot again the next time. Lastly, I have my Hoya glabella. And I might be most proud about this plant because Peperomia glabella, because I'm not the best at taking care of Peperomia. I actually took this cutting from my first glabella that I got because I was afraid I would kill it, and I did. So it's a good thing I took a cutting. But this one was living in water for a very, very long time before I potted it up, so I didn't know how it would do in soil, but it's done really well. It's putting out new growth. It just recently started putting out new growth, so I think it's finally become established. And you can see there are some dead leaves at the bottom. 2 of them look like they're yellowing. So, but that's fine. Like I said, these are the oldest leaves on the plant, so I'm not worried that they're dying. As long as it's putting out these beautiful new growth, I feel like it just looks so good. I'm so proud of this plant. Yeah, and this one's been on my east-facing porch along with my Monstera deliciosa, and I think just these 2 are out there, so it's doing really well, and I'm so proud of it. I can't wait until it gets even bigger. Any Peperomia success story for me is like a really big success story, so I'm very proud of it. It looks really great. So my last plant that I almost forgot to mention is my Scindapsus pictus Exotica. This was the biggest plant that I repotted, and as you can see, it looks like a completely full and established plant now. Before, it didn't really look that nice, but now it looks very nicely filled out, and it just looks really good. This one put out a lot of new leaves too. Like I can see this one right away is a new leaf, and there's a whole bunch of other new little baby leaves. This one I think was really easy to keep moist because it's in such a big pot. I would just keep it in this tray, water it until the tray filled up, and that was that. There's absolutely no yellowing on this one. I think this one looks by far the healthiest out of all of them, so I'm very happy about it. I'm happy with all of these babies, but looks good. There's a lot of leaves about to unfurl. It just looks so good. I'm looking at it on the on the like monitor, and it looks really good. That looks beautiful. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And I remember it didn't look that nice when I first put it together, and it was a little bit difficult trying to arrange it, but it all worked out in the end. In summary, what I did for all these plants was I kept the soil moist. For the Hoya, I let it dry out a little bit more than all the other plants that I had, but overall, I never let them dry out, and maybe for the string of dolphins, I let it dry out, and that's why it lost 2 of its strings. So yeah, don't let the soil dry out. And also what I find to be very helpful is putting it in a little bowl when you water it, or having it on a little tray, watering it so that the water seeps out from the bottom, and then just leaving the tray there so it can soak up the rest of that. I find that's the perfect amount of water for the plants. Or you can bottom water. Either one of those I find have worked really well. I've kind of flopped between both of those methods, and I think my plants are doing very, very well. So if you see a little bit of yellowing on the old leaves falling off, I think that's fine. As long as you're seeing new growth, I think that's very good news to see. But that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!